All right. Business Process Management Part 2, Frameworks, Methodologies, and Techniques. What are the frameworks? There's the Accord framework, which is a methodological framework that maps current state models as well as unstructured data to conceptual models. Accord is methodological. So it kind of collects unstructured data and current state models and like maps them to conceptual models, okay? Enhanced Telecommunications Operations Map. It's a framework developed for the telecommunications industry. Government Strategic Reference Model Lifecycle Framework provides generic government processes and patterns for each page of the organizational maturity. Model-based and integrated process improvement MIPI is a cyclical framework whose steps include assess, readiness, outline process, under review, detailed data collection, form model or current processes, assesses and redesign process, implemented, improve process, and review process. So, the model based on integrated process improvement is basically cyclical. That means you do something, you kind of like check on it, and then you kind of like see the impact, and then you take decisions from there, and you go back. It's a cyclical thing. You assess, you outline, you detail the data collection, you form the model on the current process, you redesign the process, you implement, you improve your process, you review again. The last framework is process classification, which is basically a classification framework that details processes and is used for benchmarking and performance measurements. Why not? And the methodologies are basically adaptive case management, ACM, a method used when processes are not fixed or static in nature and have a lot of human interaction. Business processes re-engineering, the fundamental rethinking and redesigning of business process to generate improvements in critical performance measures such as cost, quality, right? A process re-engineering is something that's kind of like, that should be foundational. Or interesting. When is it triggered? I don't know. I have no idea. All right. Continuous improvement. That means we're always looking at the process. We're always looking at what we're doing. We're always looking at the results that we're getting. Now, ongoing monitoring and adjusting of existing process to bring them closer to goals or performance targets. Lean, a continuous improvement methodology that focuses on elimination of waste and process defined as work from which the customer as the process will not pay. Lean methodology, right? And lean methodology, continuous improvement there's a lot of things that they would kind of like dismiss because ultimately as long as we're improving, we're good. But improving efficiency, effectiveness, I have no idea. I guess we'll fucking check this out. And a continuous improvement methodology, with lean, you kind of like, you try your best to kind of like remove waste and friction. Six Sigma and continuous improvement methodology that focuses on elimination of variations of the outcome of a process. It's statistically oriented. So with Six Sigma, you're trying your best to kind of like remove variables, or at the very least, like eliminate the things that could cause variations. And the theory of constraints is a methodology that holds the performance of an organization can be optimized by managing three variables: the throughput of a process, operational expense of the process, to produce that throughput, and the inventory of products. So it's basically like, what are you producing, what costs to produce that, and where are you getting that, and how are you storing that? But it seems theory of constraints is a lot more operational, right? The performance of process is dominated by one key constraint given at any given time, because you're either like, something's coming out, something's being consumed for it to come out. It's a systems approach. Theory of constraints is very much a system. I'm getting this resource and doing this, it's costing me this much to actually do it, and then it ends with something else. It's very much a system. Total quality management, a management philosophy that holds the underlying principle that the process of organization should provide the customer and stakeholders, both internal and external, with the highest quality products and services. And that these products or services meet and exceed the customer and stakeholders' expectations. Techniques. The following table lists techniques not included in the techniques chapter of the BABOK guide. These are techniques that are not included in the chapter. There's cost analysis, which is a list of cost per activity total to show the detailed cost of the process, used frequently by business to gain an understanding and appreciation of cost association. Critical to quality, basically set of diagrams that form in the form of trees that assist in aligning process improvement effort to customer requirements. CTQ is a technique used in Six Sigma, but it's not exclusive to Six Sigma. Cycle time analysis, analysis of each time that takes place with the process. Cycle time analysis is also known as duration analysis. We're analyzing how much time it takes for the process to go. Define, measure, analysis, design, verify. Data, define, measure, analyze, design, verify. DMADV. A data-driven structure roadmap used to develop a new or improve existing processes. Is a technique used in Six Sigma, but not exclusive to Six Sigma as well. So you define something, you measure it, you analyze it, you design it again, and then you verify it. Define, measure, analyze, improve control. Oh, improve control. So you don't design, you just improve on it. And by improving on it, you probably add something or remove something. That's interesting. I'm sure this is also in Six Sigma. Oh, they didn't mention it. A method used to, it did. A data-driven structure roadmap used to improve processes is a technique used in Six Sigma, but is not exclusive to Six Sigma. Drum, buffer, rope. A method, so separate every word, yeah? There's a drum, and there's a buffer, and then there's a rope. To ensure that the system constraint always functions at a maximum possible output, by ensuring that there is a sufficient buffer of materials, which is probably inventory, and just prior to the constraint to keep it continuously busy, it can be used as in BPM to ensure process efficiency. Failure mode, the effect analysis, a system failure mode and effect analysis, a systematic method of investigating process failures and defects and identifying potential causes. FMEA is a technique that assists in locating problems as its process correcting them with developing to be processes. There's House of Quality, Voice of Customer, a matrix relating customer desires and product characteristics to the capabilities of an organization. It is a technique that could be used in developing the one-to-be processes. Inputs, guide, outputs, enablers, a diagram that describes the context of process by listing the inputs and outputs of the processes, the guides that are used to inform the execution of the processes, and the supporting tools that and information required for the process. Kaizen events. Right, so inputs, guide, outputs, enablers. Like what guides the input and what enables the output. That's how you should look at it. Kaizen event, Kaizen is a Japanese thing. Focused, rapid effort, like, and what are the things that make you happy, just do them. And a Kaizen event is basically rapid effort to improve value delivery on one specific activity or sub-process. Process simulation, a model that of the process and a set of randomized variables that allow the multiple variations. So you simulate basically a process and throw variables to see how it reacts. Supplier inputs, process outputs, customers, a table that summarizes inputs and outputs in the multiple processes, also known as COPIS, which is simply SIPOC spelled backwards. Do we have a COPIS upward? No? So customers, outputs, process, inputs, suppliers. So you either approach it from the supplier's perspective or the customer's perspective, but you check the process to see how it goes. It's a table that summarizes the inputs and outputs from multiple processes, also known, right? Like, it's moving from one place to another. Theory of constraints and thinking process, basically a set of logical cause and effect models used to diagnose conflicts, identify the root cause of problems, and define future states in a system that successfully resolve the root cause. So you're kind of like not testing things, you're creating a theory of why things go wrong, how can they go wrong, and what you do without them. It's a technique that processes assists in locating problems as is process and correcting them when developing to-be processes. Value-added analysis looks at the benefit that the customers add to each step of the process by identifying opportunities and improvement. Value stream analysis used to assess the value added by each functional area of a business to the customer as part of the end-to-end process. Who, what, when, where, why, the 5 W's, a set of questions. They forgot the how I know, and the H. The 5 W's may also include how added to become the 5 W's and an H. And Yep, those are the techniques. Now, underlying competencies. Business analysts working on with the discipline of business process management are required to challenge the status quo, dig into understand the root cause and the problem, assess why things are being done in a particular way, and encourage subject matter experts to consider new ideas and approaches to make their processes more efficient and effective. They also require to understand, articulate, and move back and forth between internal and external views of the process under analysis. So imagine it this way, like, a business analyst's job is to take everyone and kind of like show them things in different ways from different places. Due to the effects that changes the processes have on the working habits of individuals, interaction skills are valuable in a BPM initiative. Business analysts frequently negotiate and arbitrate between individuals and different opinions, and expose and resolve conflicts between different groups within the organization. The business analyst is a neutral and independent facilitator of the change. BPM initiatives are likely to involve all levels of the organization, and the business analyst is required to communicate across organizational boundaries as well as outside the organization. So, due to the effects of changes of the process, like a process literally is like, what am I doing for this outcome? So, like, a change in the process means habits change. And interactional skills are valuable in BPM initiative. Why? Because, like, you're telling people to change, and that's the hardest thing that people could ever do. And frequently negotiate and arbitrate between individuals and different opinions, and expose the resolve conflicts between different groups with the organization. And the business analyst is a neutral and independent facilitator of the change. Interesting. All right, I don't know, I'm just kind of like considering the horrors of talking to people about change. And last but not least, impact on knowledge areas. Look at that, we're almost done. Now, what about the impact of knowledge areas? This section explains blah, blah, blah. It's useful business analysts working on the discipline of business process management. It's not intended to be an exhaustive list, but we have 6 of them, right? We have the business analysis, planning and monitoring. We have elicitation and collaboration. We have requirements lifecycle management. Like, literally, we have strategy analysis, requirements analysis, and design definition, and we have solution evaluation, like everything else. And that ends us being together, man. So the business analysis planning, progressive elaboration is common in the planning of BPM initiatives. Progressive. Why? Because, like, you don't just figure out the process, man. You don't. Nobody does. And so the fact that the amount of information available for full planning may be limited in the initial stages. BPM initiatives involve continuous improvement activities, and common cause of failure of BPM initiatives is a failure to plan for ongoing monitoring of the effect changes to the process. In BPM initiatives, the initial focus of business analysis work is analyzing and improving the business process before looking at the technology used to support the process, at any changes that might be required to software application and work procedure. So you plan before you look at the technology, you have to, and you have to consider basically like the outcomes, and you have to consider, you pick the technology based on the outcome, not the other way around, right? So the techniques are estimation, item tracking, review, stakeholder list, map or personas, workshops, and process modeling. Other techniques are inputs, guide, outputs, enablers, IGOE. And then you have elicitation and collaboration. For BPM initiative to be successful, the scope of the initiative and the scope of the affected process must be defined and understood. We start with the scope always because that's how we basically understand the people involved in it, right? And you need approvals, and you also need a lot of people saying yes to doing what they want to do, what you want them to do, and the change, right? Change is the hardest thing on people, especially people that are used to doing something one way. So process modeling and stakeholder analysis are generally utilized during the elicitation phase of a BPM initiative. During elicitation, the business analyst focuses on cause and effect, on both changing existing processes and keeping the process as they are through the elicitation and collaboration effort. As an existing process is changed, the effect of any process improvements identified on the organization, people and technology are considered. Process maps are an important tool to drive elicitation and BPM initiatives, and the stakeholders are frequently consulted during this development. Effective elicitation and collaboration is critical in process modeling, analysis, and design work. Effective, efficient. Like, you're talking to people, you're connecting people, man. Fuck off. Process changes can have significant impact across the organization, so managing stakeholders and their expectations is particularly critical. Yes, without effective stakeholder management, process changes may not be successfully implemented, or the changes may not meet the organizational goals or objectives. People are assholes, they don't want change. Techniques are brainstorming, reviews, document analysis, root cause analysis, scope modeling, focus groups, interface analysis, stakeholder list maps or personas, interviews, surveys, questionnaires, use cases, scenarios, user stories, workshops, metrics and key performance, observations, process modeling and prototyping. Other business analysis techniques, house of quality / voice of customer. Interesting. Let's Google that one. Which seems to be intense. So the house of quality seems to be a bit more of a map that looks like a house. An importance to customer requirements, energy needed to close the door seal resistance, check. So they're kind of like checking on how basically, I don't know, it looks like more of a sales funnel kind of like approach. Interesting. Very interesting. I'll look into it. But like, house of quality, what the fuck, man? Intense shit. What are the requirements for lifecycle management? Well, BPM is set to approaches that focus ways to deliver value across multiple functional areas through the process-centric lens. Delivering additional value is often related to deliberately undertaking change, but could also result from an ad hoc request or review of process. Delivering additional value could be like a one-time thing, or could be like a full one-place thing, one-time thing, or a full basically like restructure of the company. All right, that's kind of cool. And the impact of BPM activities on requirement lifecycle management is significant, as it can drive out business requirements resulting in new design, coding implementation and post-implementation changes as a responsibility for the business analyst to maintain this connection and ensure that communication is effectively conducted with stakeholders and process owners, who are the ultimate decision makers when it is about processes, change, and supporting solutions. So the documentation of business processes is available to all stakeholders as it is to be used in the daily operations of the business. So requirements lifecycle is basically like, just kind of like documenting everything that needs to happen in order for things to be done, and when they're done, what needs to be happen afterwards. So documentation of business processes is available to all stakeholders. It's to be used in daily operations of businesses. Impact of BPM activities or requirements of lifecycle management is significant as it drives out business requirements, resulting in new design, coding, implementation, and post-implementation changes, and the responsibility of business analysts to maintain this connection and ensure the communication is effectively conducted. Amazing. There are no other techniques. Strategy analysis, context strategy analysis involves understanding the role of the process plays in the enterprise value chain. At the minimum, of any process that interacts with the processes affected by the initiative must be considered. The current state is likely to be described as is value chain, and the current performance measured for the business processes. The future state will be to be value chain. Notice, we won't go back to that because that's where strategy lives. Moving from here to here, what's the strategy? And continuous improvement methods may simply focus on the performance measures of determine the strategy, and change the strategy involve identification and business process changes. What are the techniques? Document analysis, functional decomposition, interviews, lesson learned, process analysis, process modeling. The other one, drum, buffer, rope. Let's kind of Google that one, right? It's the second time I see it. I know about the buffer. I'm looking at the drum and the rope, and I feel like it's kind of like, there's a drum that anchors everything, and there's a rope. So it's a theory of constraints that controls production by synchronizing all work to the pace of the shop's bottleneck constraint. So the rope is basically the fixed distance. So like this is the maximum we can do with this one. So everything is designed around that constraint. Right? As a theory constraints method, rope, A, B, work centers brought to you by velocity scheduling system. Okay, we can dive deeper into it at one point, I guess. Oh, my bad. Let me just keep it. House of voice quality, customer input guides, output enablers, thinking process, TOC thinking process. Huh? And the requirements analysis and design definition. Requirement analysis and design definition will focus on defining to be process model. Requirements architecture is likely to include the process model, associated business rules and decisions, information requirements, and the organizational structure. Solution options typically include changes to IT needed to support the process, outsourcing of aspects of the process, and similar changes. You benchmark, your prioritization, prototyping, scope modeling, stakeholder list map personas, workshops, business rules analysis, decision modeling, estimation, functional decomposition, metrics, and key performance indicators. There's also the Kaizen event and process simulation that you add. With this one, by the way, like requirement analysis, it's just like, what do I need to do in order for this to be a success? That's basically it. That's why everything is kind of like, it's either stakeholder oriented, like workshop, stakeholder list, scope modeling, prototyping, and then basically rules. What are we working with? Decision modeling, estimation. And last one is solution evaluation. Solution evaluation typically occurs repeatedly during BPM initiatives in order to assess the performance of the business process. Because it's a business process, that means every time we have a thought, we can test it. We can change, we can apply a change, we can implement something in order to structure. As processes are evaluated for different scenarios, they can be refined and the results are monitored. Solution evaluation tasks prove insight into the understanding of an impact or process improvements and the value delivered by business process change. The solution may also involve process mining, which is such techniques that audit trails or transaction logs to obtain. Process mining seems like it's a data thing, but you basically like, the way I see it is with every point in the process, you kind of like create a data point, and then you kind of like follow how many times you do the process and how many times you adhere to those data points, or how much do you shift, or you measure them by time and something like this, or productivity. And you kind of end up kind of like seeing how the process is kind of like doing well through data-oriented approaches. The analyzed solution performance task is performed to understand the differences between potential value and actual value. This analysis is performed to discover why there is a variance between potential and actual value. To determine if a solution can perform better or realize more value, the evaluation examines opportunities of constraints of the implemented solution. So basically, like, to see if there's more value that you can extract out of it, or you could add more value. You kind of have to measure them based on the constraints of the solution, or whatever it is. I'd imagine it satisfies how it satisfies the needs, how it could be improved. It may trigger further optimization in the process and repeat of the BPM life cycle. Remember, it's life cycle. So the BPM is a cycle. Is a business process management is a consistent cyclical thing. So you're always kind of like looking at, here, okay. And every time you kind of like do something new, more things pop up. And when more things pop up, you get to experiment differently with other stuff. Acceptance and evaluation criteria. These are the techniques. Metrics, key performance, observations, organization modeling, process modeling, reviews, brainstorming, business capability analysis, business rules analysis, decision analysis, root cause, risk analysis, benchmarking, balanced scorecard, document analysis, estimation, interviews, survey questionnaire, SWOT analysis. Why? Because you're working on a solution and you're looking at the solution if it's a yes or a no. So note how all of these are analysis and asking questions and checking on the metrics and observation, right? And modeling the organization after the solution to see if it made a difference or not. If it didn't make an impact, why the fuck did we do it? And ultimately, other business analysis techniques, Kaizen event, failure mode, and effect analysis, FEMA, process simulation, and value stream analysis. And with that, man, we're done with chapter 11. I fucking love you guys, and we fucking did it. This glossary basically is just teaching us all the different like meanings, so we're good. Techniques to task masking is kind of like it maps the techniques to the tasks. I'm not sure how they're doing that, but maybe I'll take a look later. Contributors are, this is basically a reference of شو اسمه, of the people that helped making the book. Knowledge areas, they're kind of like describing the changes. This is version 2. Version 3 of the BABOK guide has extensively, this is version 2 or version 3? This is version 3. So these are the changes from version 2. Just nerd it out, and ultimately there's the index. So the only thing that is worth looking at is like the technique or task mapping. Fucking love you guys. We did it. We did a full fucking tour on the BABOK manual. I love you. Yalla bye.